What's up, nerds? Welcome to Chad's AV Workshop, and in today's episode I want to talk about flying these babies, FPV drones, in the winter. Now, you would think flying your drone in the winter would be the same as the summer, but there are two major factors that are going to make flying in the winter much more difficult. I'm talking about the cold, and then I'm talking about snow and ice for two big factors. Now, with these hazards in mind, I would say your first tip, numero uno, number one, is to make sure that you dress appropriately and that you act smart for winter. Smart for winter. Be winter smart. Wear a coat, wear a hat, wear gloves, wear boots. This is going to be really helpful when you lose your drone in a big field and you need to go find it. You're going to be out there for a pretty long time, so you're going to want to dress appropriately. A couple other tips that should come with the winter is for people that fly their drones in their cars. The first is if you get out to go find your drone, make sure your visual observer stays in the car, or you take your keys with you. If you get stuck outside of your car in the winter, it's gonna be brutal. So make sure that doesn't happen to you, especially if you're in a remote area. Along with that, I would say don't leave the radio on or the heaters on or anything like that on when you're just sitting in the car waiting or flying or doing whatever. You don't want the battery to die when you're in a remote area either. So make sure that you dress smart and you act smart when you're out there, and of course tell somebody where you're going and where you are. That way, if you do run into trouble, someone is gonna come get you. The next tip I would say would be to get one of these little beepers. I think everyone should kind of have one of these anyways, but they're super cheap. You can get them on Amazon, and all they do is just, if you crash, it just gives one extra little beep to your drone. If your drone doesn't have a built-in beeper, this is gonna be especially helpful. When you crash in the snow, it is so hard to find your drone, and the beeps that come from the motors can be really subdued, especially if it's deep in the snow. So having an extra beeper can go a long way. And like I said, they're not that expensive. Number three, I would say, is take care of your batteries. These babies absolutely hate the cold. I would go so far as to say maybe fly only to half a tank if this is a gas tank. Make sure that you're only depleting halfway in the winter. You want to save extra juice to get your drone home. They're going to act really sporadic in the winter. Batteries are just, they hate the cold. They don't act the same. So you want to take extra care of your batteries. I want to stress this next tip number, I think we're on number 4, and that's to get a landing pad and a takeoff pad. These are actually way overpriced. They're too expensive for what they are, and that's probably stopped a lot of people from getting them. But the takeoff landing pad has two really awesome advantages. The first is it's not going to get any snow or ice or anything all up in your drone, because you're going to be on the pad, which is really helpful. The next thing that the pad is great for is showing off. Your visual observer is going to think you're the cat's pajamas if you can land on that pad every single time. So I don't know, get the pad. It's a great way to brag to the people around you about how good a pilot you are, and it's a good way to keep your drone clean. The next thing I want to stress, if you can, is to try to weather seal your drone. So you can get a little spray that goes on your ESC and your flight controller, and it just keeps your electronics safe and really good inside, and that's gonna be really good for protecting your electronics. I will also say drones like this one, even though they're great in the summer, they're kind of not so good in the winter. And I'm talking about drones that have an open core like this. If you got an open core in your drone, it's probably not the best idea to fly it in the winter. Try to look for a drone that has the plastic sidings that cover the interior. That's gonna keep your electronics super safe, and it's gonna keep your drone flying really well in the winter. If you can't do that, I mean, you're gonna have to make do. Try to land on like a driveway or pick areas that are more plowed or more clear. Something that happens all the time to me, and this is number 6, is to check your motors for snow and water and ice and slush. This thing's gonna fill up with snow. When you crash, it's just gonna be a huge snowball. It's gonna be tough to deal with. And even if you shake off all the snow, if it's really cold outside, what I've had happen is I shake all the snow off in the car, and it melts, and then I go outside and it's -30, and the water that's in the motors freezes up. And I go to take off, and 2 of them fly and 2 of them don't fly, and the drone crashes, or you just burn out your motors because they're struggling against that ice. So a big tip I would say is just check and make sure that these things spin, and check outside in the snow. If you check in your car and then you go outside and it's still frozen, you're gonna have issues. And the last tip I would say, tip number 7, is don't fly long range if you can. I know people love long range flights, and if that's you, if you're really, really, really good at it, then these are just tips. You don't have to do it. But I would say avoid long range flights. Like I said before, the batteries don't work really good. If it's snowing outside, these hot motors can melt the snow, and then it can freeze again inside and kind of clog up in the air. If you lose your drone, it's harder to find it. For all of these reasons, I think long range is not really ideal for the winter. It's just gonna be impossible to get your drone if you crash. If you're happy to, if you're in a spot where you have to do it, like this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, of course, take the risk. If you lose your drone, it is what it is. But if you're just practicing, I would say put the long range on hold just for a couple months, just while you can. And even though those are 7 things to do for the winter, I'm gonna give you 2 bonus awesome things that I love about winter. The first is that in the winter, we have a ton of snow. We have this huge blanket of snow, and even though it can get really wet, it acts like a huge airbag. So if you want to practice like juicy flicks or vanny rolls or anything really close to the ground, the winter is definitely the time to do it, because I feel like the drone doesn't take as much damage when it plows into a big pillow. Yeah, it's harder to find, but if you're not going long range, if you're in like an area that you know really well, you're gonna be able to recover the drone, and I think you can take a little bit more risks with the snow. The other way that I think you can take more risks is over gaps that are around water. So if there's like a bridge gap or a dock or something that you're really wanting to fly in and out of in the summer, well, in the winter you can practice those gaps, and if you crash your drone, the water's gonna be frozen, so you're not gonna lose your drone, and you can walk out on the water, or on the ice I should say, and pick up your drone, which is a huge advantage to the winter. You can practice these skills, and then you can go and just knock it out of the park in the summer when things open up again. So those are my tips and tricks for winter. I hope that you like them. I hope that you keep on flying throughout the winter. I know that I love doing it, so I'm not gonna stop. If you've got other tips, let me know. Let me know in the comments if there's tips that I missed that other people should definitely be doing. Hit them up, and if you like my tips and if they're helpful, let me know in the comments. I'll see you next time.